Hello.
Hi.
So today I was thinking about, when we've had discussions about labels and how some people find the labels useful and some people don't find the labels useful. So you've got a lovely demonstration, and I wondered if you'd demonstrate what labels, have done for you and how you've experienced them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird because this is the first time I've ever prepared anything for any of our videos, and it's like, oh, this is weird.
Okay.
Normally I just rock up and we're like, what's
Yeah,
happening?
yeah.
So
Well, that's why it's no frills.
yeah, and so what we're thinking about is like we have talked about labels before, and I've used this analogy in some of the talks I've done to try and explain how I saw my illness, that I was given an illness title, and how I saw it, and the treatment process I received.
Okay.
So I like to use analogies. So the analogy that I'm using is that I'm this bag of chocolate, and so that represents me. And so when I first went into hospital when I was 20, it was sort of like, right, we'll go in and we'll have a look and see what you like. So it was a bit like, if I can get into them, and that's what it's like. It's hard to get into because it was a closed book. I wouldn't speak to anybody or wouldn't talk to anything. So,
Yeah.
so when I first went into hospital, first psychiatric hospital, first time, it was like, oh, we'll pick a bit out, we'll watch her, we'll observe her. So it was like picked a bit out, and then it was like I said a little bit, to answer the questions, and it was like, right, so well, some of that is we'll put that in that box, but we label depression. Some of it goes in there, that's definitely depression. And then you're showing signs of anorexia nervosa. So let's put them in. And then you've got signs of obsessive compulsive disorder. So we'll put them in. We've got other things, but oh well, we won't bother with that. So they put that back because I didn't want to deal with that. And it was like how the treatment process was set up at the time was very in boxes. And I think we spoke about it before, how they separate the body up.
Yes.
Well, they separated the mind up with me. So they thought the obsessive compulsive disorder bit isn't really worth bothering about, then it's minimal. We'll bank it in order of severity. The anorexia nervosa, we'll leave it at the minute. It's not too bad. You've just got a little bit of weight and you're just restricting and you've just got all this. What we'll do is we'll focus on the depression.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of the first time in hospital, spent a lot of weeks and months of day patients and an inpatient. And it was like, oh, well, let's have a look. Right, well, we've got a bit out. It's got a bit better because we've given you tablets. I slept for nearly 3 months in hospital and stuff like that and recovered and stuff.
It was deemed as although the tablets were suppressed.
In there, they're not dealing with anything.
Yeah. So was it that, so say that this is your body and they're taking bits out, actually the bit that they took out and put back in was the fact that it had been medicated. You'd not been cured, you'd been medicated.
Yeah, well, this was the focus. So the focus was about
that you did display the symptoms because of the medication.
Yeah.
So then.
But then I did still have depression.
Yes.
But the comments that I got from when I questioned, is this helping or not? It was like, well, you're not great with them, so you'd be worse without them. So they knew that they said that medication was the answer, but I had just tweaks as in dosage and trying different medications, and that was why I was in hospital, to be observed. But so they were doing that, and then they realised, because they saw me a lot and I was in there 24/7 and then as a day patient all day every day, they were like, right, we need to put that back on the back burner now. Anorexia nervosa is getting worse. You're losing more weight. So we're going to focus on that now. Forget everything else. Put that back. We can't deal with that. We'll just focus on that. And so that's how I was treated at first. It was that became the focus. And so everything else was forgotten about. and it was about treating the symptoms, the things that they could put in my bag. So the restricting. So I was given like food diaries to fill in, and I'd never weighed any food up until then. But then when they gave me a food diary and it said amount, I'm like, I've got to weigh food. So I started weighing food and stuff like that. And so again, it was being getting weighed every week, having blood tests every week, doing
So
food
what was
diaries.
happening actually was
Treating this.
Yeah, from what you were saying, some of what was happening was that, you know, you already had a problem with calories because you had an eating disorder. So to weigh food would just add to the ego's ripping of
Something I've
now
never
we can
thought
think
of.
of.
I've never
Let's
thought of
think
a more
of that
specific
now.
way I can do it to get it accurate
Okay.
and that kind of thing.
So that was kind of helping you in your anorexia, really. Not helping you at all, but you know what I mean by
It was
so you
colluding
could
with
grab
it, as I say.
Yeah.
It was colluding with it and making me think, oh, it's all right. This is what I should be doing.
Yes.
And when things came up about the depression, it was like, oh, we're not here to talk about that. I wanted to bring up things about obsessive compulsive disorder because part of those two put together was my exercise addiction, my exercise obsessions and need. And that was like 6 hours a day to the second and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, we're not talking about that. That goes in that bag. It was like, stop talking about that, put it in that bag because that's got nothing to do with us. Somebody else can deal with that, which nobody else ever did because that never got to the top of the list. It was that. And then that got worse. So more things got added to it because.
So the things in the bag, if that got worse, then the things in the bag would have got worse as well.
But we're not focusing on them.
Right.
We're focusing on this. That's what they said. And shut up about that other stuff. Okay. This is what we're here to deal with. And then obviously that got worse and more things added because my physical health came into it then. As in, because I was so underweight, I was 4 stone when I was 20 and all. And it's like, right, we need to deal with this, forget about all that. And the way that they dealt with it was just like, I say, food diaries, all this and that. Or in the end, it was refeeding. That we solved it. You're cured of anorexia. You haven't got that anymore because we've refed you. You're a healthy weight. What they didn't tell me.
You might as well weigh rocks.
Yeah. What they didn't tell me, and what that had just changed to. I got the label. It'd been forget about the weight. I got rid of that bit, but everything else about my eating issues were the same. So I had the labels atypical anorexia nervosa, but also I'd learned about suppressing feelings with food because I'd learned that in hospital and about how food is the focus. It was like, oh, well, if I find it, it's like, oh, if we put them bits together, you've got binge eating disorder as well. And with root round, and it's all in there sometime. And so I got those. But because those weren't treatable, as I'd say, they weren't commissioned to deal with those. They were the eating disorder service were only commissioned to deal with that, what they'd cured me of. It was like, oh, discharge, you're all right. When everybody realised I wasn't, because I still had all this in my bag and I had new stuff that I'd put in there, that's when I got another label. And I got the borderline personality disorder label. They put it all in, and then that meant they didn't have to look at anything because they all squashed it in there and said, that's who you are. It's your personality. And then it stopped being focusing on treatment and getting better, and it's focused on managing me, managing all this. And so that's what I see my first 10 years in the mental health survey.
How are you saying it then is because you were looked at and divided up into parts as the medical method, that you divided up into parts. It doesn't work. And because it didn't work for you, and well, what we do works, so it's you that's defective. Yeah. But we can't make a human being. We can't even make an apple.
So all of it was empty.
Yeah.
And putting it's new when it's you. You've got borderline personality disorder. Yeah. That's what you just have to learn to cope with.
Yeah. So it's not where did you get that personality disorder and how did that develop and things like that. It's like anything that's said is to blame nature. We can't make nature, but let's blame nature. We'll blame the sun, we'll blame the wind, and we'll blame you. We can't make any of these things. So it seems quite an arrogance to not explore. So we only explore as much as we want to, and then you're to blame.
Yeah, and in my case, because I looked up to them, and I looked up to anybody, because my self-esteem was so low, what they found in their book, just like
Because you thought you'd be constantly being told that you're defective.
Yeah, and not good enough.
Yes.
And I saw people as being higher than me, knowing better than me. I just believed all this stuff. This is how I became, how I came to see myself.
How could all this show you that somebody else knows better than you? If none of those people, as I say, human beings can't make a human being. We've been given the tools by whoever created us. So how can anybody say that you're not good enough, or you feel that this here, as you described it, is better than you? That somebody else knows better than you if it failed?
Because they blamed me. If it wasn't them that had failed, it was me. Again, I think I've mentioned it before because it's imprinted on my brain. I can see it written in my notes. Deborah's had lots of input, but with very little success. It felt like it was me who was failing. It was me who
believed
that
it
was
as well
defective.
because you were told, as many do, you're defective.
Yeah. And I truly believe that everybody else knew better than me, particularly people with letters after the name, particularly people with power.
It's all made up letters, though.
But at that time, it was seen as being God. And I'd been brought up in an environment where my mum and dad were people who saw doctors in really high esteem. Like, you know, my mum would get dressed up. She'd get dressed up to go to doctors, you know what I mean, and make an effort and stuff.
You taught at a young age that this person is a high esteem with this label, but it's a made up label and it's a made up teaching. So it's not true, it's a lie, because everybody, no matter what label you've got, the only one that we all can agree on, you have to agree on. You know, if people don't agree, then it can't be true. For something to be true, everybody on the planet has to agree with it. I think majority of people on the planet, as far as I know anyway, would agree that we're all human. So that's the only thing I know that can be true there. So, you know, so labels are made up, somebody has to make up. We make up new words all the time, don't we? All the time people make up new words. Does it mean that they're true? No, because the words will change and there'll be more words made up. And that includes label.
And I think one thing I'd learned as a child was that adults know better, and that you respect what an adult says, and even if it don't make sense, you just go along and do it because they know best. And I think because I was still very childlike in my development, even at 20, I did as I was told. I was compliant. Like I said, with anorexia nervosa, when they were treating me, and it was like, oh, write this down, you do this. And when I was an inpatient, you eat this, you eat this. Like, yes, I'll do it. Because I was just doing as I was told.
So what changed then for you to, you know, what happened to you when all this didn't work? And then there was, you know, for you to see all this, what happened? What changed?
I lived like that with that label for a while, a good few years. And then I said, I've had enough of dealing with this. So I registered some chocolates all over at you. I've had enough. Is there anything else? And that's when I was doing psychotherapy. And
I think you'd said that on the previous bit as a last resort.
Yeah, it was seen as a last resort.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was. So when I took myself, the same person with all my labels in, I took myself off to psychotherapy. And 1 week I'd be talking about my anorexia. Next week I'd be talking about how I self-harmed. Then I'd be talking about a bit about depression and binge eating disorder. Then a bit about anxiety, and then a bit about the past and anorexia. And after a while of being patient, he said, why are we talking about all these things? And because that's what I thought who I was, I thought I was this person.
All these labels.
I said, that's what I'm here to do. And he said, no, we're not. Right. And what I learned therapy was opening all these little bits, putting them all in, bits that were floating around, bits that didn't make sense, bits that I didn't have a clue what even should be in there, but were in there. Put them all up. And so that's what we're going to talk about. You're a human being who's struggling with something. You're like, oh, right. And so that exploration in me.
Putting you back together almost.
Yeah, or even finding out what the parts were because I didn't know. Some of the bits were right at the bottom, right in the corner that I've got all this to deal with. I can't just deal with that thing and put it down there, like my abuse experience. That's just too much to deal with at the minute. I've got all these to deal with. Yeah. I can't deal with that. And what he wanted to do was get rid of all that and deal with that one, the thing that's stuck in the corner that you don't want to deal with, that's going a bit mangy and affecting everything else. Yeah, and he wanted to deal with the stuff that really the abnormal experience that shouldn't be in anybody's experience, if that makes sense.
And I guess the key actually represents opening the door to you rather than shutting that door and you be just coming to labour.
Yeah, to be fair, therapy, like, it's been, and I'm still having it, and it's still thought-provoking, it's still helpful, it's still developmental, whatever words you want to use, and it's still positive. But along with that, because I've been opening these bags and looking at the mangy bits stuck at the bottom and stuff like that, it's been really distressing, it's been really horrifying at times and really uncomfortable, but it's more dealing with reality rather than dealing with just all the little symptoms and all the little bits and pieces for me.
Well, I guess as well, have you found therapy more discomfort than living with these things that you've lived with? It's just that one is masking and the other one is facing.
Yeah.
And the only way you can, it's like any bridge, you can't go around it, you have to cross it. But once you've crossed the bridge, you can knock off some of these because they go over the bridge then. You've gone over, you've gotten over that.
Which is why I was prepared to do anything, because when I said that with borderline personality, it's just about coping, and so did DBT and stuff and learning to cope with your anxiety, learning to cope with this thing. Like, I'd had that much. I don't want to live like this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. Is there an alternative, or is there something else? And that's when psychotherapy was introduced with me. But I tried to take my old ways of working with me because I thought that's what you did. And it wasn't till I met him and like you, and it's like, oh, this is completely different.
Yeah, because when you're born, you don't have these things.
No. So you're born as the empty bag, aren't you?
So when you're born, you don't have these things. These things are introduced. So it's again, as we say, it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. You've been born into an abnormal way of life, and all of the people around you behave in an abnormal way, and that way that they're behaving in has been normalized. Do you see what I mean? So if you say for instance, what they used to say is if you go if you spend time in a home with people that are have a mental disorder, you're more likely to pick something up from them. And so ultimately that's what you're born into, because as we've spoken previously about the things that have been normalized in society and what society deems as normal, actually when you look at them, a lot of things aren't normal. It's not normal to put, for instance, the food that we eat. It's not normal. Would you say it's normal to put chemicals in food? Would you think that is normal?
But it's accepted, isn't it?
We've accepted that when we read the back of the label, and we've accepted that we're going to eat these chemicals, and we've normalised it. And then the more things that were normal, so we go deeper and deeper and deeper into our own abnormalities and holes as we did. And it's to say, well, why are we doing that? Why are we destroying what we can't make? Do you see what I mean? And then saying, oh, we know better, and accusing everything of this thing. And it's like when you look deeper into it, you think, who's benefiting? Somebody's benefiting from this. They're benefiting from our illness because we weren't born with it. And if illness then we weren't born with it and we have it, and it's been created. And because we weren't born with it, it couldn't be created by our creator that really made us. So something else has got to be playing a hand in it. And I'm not saying people aren't born ill, but what I'm saying is not everybody is. The majority of us aren't.
So, using that and going back to this one, if we look at it the other way around, we're born, like you say, a blank slate, we're born empty. And it's like I experienced this being told off for being naughty, not being good enough, being childish at school because I was a year behind everybody else and stuff. Being abused, my voice wasn't heard when I said I don't want to do it. It's like, oh, you haven't got a voice.
The things that you learn at school, what you might pop in is must, should, have to, got to, and fear if you don't.
Yeah.
So the other thing that overarches all that is that you're born into a prison and control.
Yeah.
And if you pop those in.
Yeah. So school being and home being told what to do. Even at school, you're told what time to eat, when you can go to the toilet, what side of the corridor.
Practices you.
Yeah.
And then it gets topped up when you go to work. You're going to be told what time your lunch is. You can have it at 12:01. You're going to be told what time to start. You're going to be told when to go. If you want to go home, you need to give a reason why. So exactly that programming that you get to school in the prison, then the school is just to train you for when you're going to go to work, or when you're going to work in prison. Because then when you go to work in a prison, you need to work. And then people then are programmed, well, I work 70 hours as if it's really good being in this prison. And who were pleasing with that? Who were pleasing to work 70 hours? Well, we're just going to please the tax man, who's then going to come along and take in the prison because you've dictated that this is what you're going to pay to us. And if you don't pay it, there will be a consequence. Well, didn't you get a consequence at school if you didn't do your work?
Yeah. You got told off, you got stayed behind, you got detention.
There's no, if you find something that's in the corner, in the little corner, it might be the choice. But everything else
is on top of it.
Yes.
And that's how you can become all in tune with something.
Yeah.
And that's when you get.
That's it. So what happens to you then as a person? You think, well, my society puts me like that, and my health ends up like that. Do you see what I mean? So it all mirrors each other, and you can see how I'm reacting normally to something that's abnormal that I've taken in.
Yeah.
And I'm reacting to that. And it's
rather than being boxed, I used to think I was born evil and I was born bad. I was born this horrible person who, whatever. So instead of, you're not born with it all, it gets put in. That's one of my learnings. I've been shaped by my experiences and how I've responded to things. I wasn't born with all that.
Yeah. Part of the debate or the blame would be, is it nature or is it nurture? And it's like, it's nurture. The majority is nurture. I'm not saying that you can't be born with certain things, but definitely, society isn't the way it is without it being in society. You didn't know it when you were born. So somebody actually taught it to you. And that's why when you look at, say, your eating disorder or OCD, or when people drink or things like that, it's like, is there somebody before you that did that? Because we usually mimic where everything, like we call Sunday lunch a tradition, it's a mimic. We're constantly parroting our predecessors, or we're parroting the people around us. But we're very rarely living our lives that we decide to live.
Yeah.
Because there's always somebody out there telling you what to do. And so, are we free?
No. And it links with the video that we did a few weeks back about, like, I got my eating disorder diagnosis when I was 20. But when we look back and look at what was in there, we were able to pick out that actually my issues and my relationship with food was developing from the age of like 4 or 5 at school and my mum's eating habits. Yeah. And it's like, I would have sworn blind. No, my eating issues started when I was 20 and I got the label anorexia nervosa, but it's not.
And it's like that. It's like when, say like if somebody's an alcoholic, quite often the parents say, oh, when they come home from, I'm so stressed, just pour me a glass of wine. And then what they learn from that is, that's what you do when you're stressed. And so it's those little nuances that we pick up. And even like, when I spoke about Stockholm syndrome, And when it's like, well, if you look at Disney films, quite often there's a mental illness played out, and then it gets normalised. And it's like, oh, it's just a film. It's like, yeah, but so is the voice in your head, and you believe it. And the voice in your head got there because all of this is chattering in your head. Do you see what I mean?
It all colludes with it.
It all colludes, so you can see how, you know, is that what's happening? It's like, yes. How do you feel?
Good. I think it makes sense to me doing it like this.
Yeah, that you know, and it's a great way to do it as well, so you can see for yourself that, you know, dealing with all these labels that actually they're just made up and you're not. But some people believe in them and say, well, I need that. I need it to be validated. And it's like, not here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.